Uruguay, polling stations opened Sunday for the second round of presidential elections. Moments earlier, both campaign commands denounced irregularities in the ballot sheets. And in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro reaffirmed the right and duty of the country's institutions to act against those who attempt to attack the country and request new sanctions. The Vice President of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, assured on Saturday that his country does not receive military equipment from other nations. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Polling stations in Uruguay opened Sunday at 8 a.m. local time for the second round of the presidential elections. 7,225 voting centers set up in the South American nation will remain open until 7:30 p.m., and 2 hours later, posters are expected to deliver their first projections. More than 2.7 million Uruguayans eligible to vote will choose between ruling party candidate Álvaro Delgado and that of the opposition Broad Front, Yamandu Orsi. Established in the national constitution, voting is mandatory, and those failing to participate are subjected to fines. The winning candidate will only need a simple majority to become the new president of the country. And a few hours before the beginning of the presidential election process in Uruguay, the campaign commands of the candidates for the ballotage denounced irregularities in the ballots. The president of the Electoral Court, Wilfredo Penco, confirmed on Saturday that the complaints have been received throughout the week. The National Party has reported sheets with errors in the date, while the Broad Front pointed out printing defects and differences in the thickness of the paper. The president of the electoral body informed that these complaints were communicated to the electoral boards, assuring that for the moment this is all they can do. He highlighted that in case of any irregularity, there are legal guarantees to address them and protect the right to vote. Now let's meet the candidate for the presidency for the Broad Front Party, Yamandu Orsi. Since his youth, Yamandu Orsi has been part of the Broad Front. He was elected mayor for 2 consecutive terms in the department of Canelones, the second most populated in Uruguay, retiring with 64% of citizens' approval. The leftist candidate in the first round obtained 43.9% of the votes, recovering his presence in Congress. In this sense, Orsi, together with his government, pledged to boost the country's economy, provide quality education, and prioritize labor, housing, and health policies with an emphasis on social justice. Let's now meet the candidate for the National Party, Álvaro Delgado. Delgado is a former secretary of the presidency of the current government of Luis Lacalle Pou. The candidate assured that his objective is to conquer the electorate to ensure the continuity of the current government project, which is characterized by a neoliberal approach. However, Delgado, in the first electoral round, obtained 26.7%, although the Chamber of Deputies was left without a majority of any bloc. Delgado in this second round will have the support of other parties, although he has generated controversy within his own party. Let's now take a short break, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, ratified that the institutions must act against those who call for sanctions to the nation's detriment. The president made the statement at the closing ceremony of the Youth and Students Anti-Fascist Congress at La Carlota Convention Center. Maduro demanded that the institutions in charge of safeguarding the integrity of the nation and the people take immediate action against those who support laws such as the one recently approved by the United States House of Representatives, which constitutes a flagrant violation of all norms of international law.
Ciudadano o ciudadana.
That citizen, that person who is in national territory and calls for this law to be passed, that Venezuelan citizen who promotes, who supports the passing of this law, and who calls for criminal sanctions and economic warfare against Venezuela.
Que promueva, que apoye la aprobación de esa ley y que pida que se hagan sanciones criminales y la guerra económica contra Venezuela viola
Flagrantly violates the Constitution of the Republic, the laws of the Republic, and the Venezuelan state. The institutions are obliged to act in the name of justice and Republican sovereignty.
En nombre de la justicia, la soberanía republicana.
Whoever calls for economic war against Venezuela, sanctions or invasion of Venezuela, the Venezuelan state, the public authorities in the name of the Constitution and the law must act immediately to preserve peace, the integrity of the country, the right to the future.
La integridad del país.
And the Youth and Students Anti-Fascist Congress concluded in Caracas, Venezuela, with a call to consolidate the international effort towards the construction of a new and fair world order. Correspondent in Caracas, Belén de los Santos, has the details.
The Anti-Fascist Youth Congress closed this Saturday in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. Delegates from 72 countries met and debated key topics in the fight against fascism. On the day of his birthday, President Nicolás Maduro closed the event by addressing the youth and students from all over the world and shared with them some words of historical leader Commander Hugo Chavez.
Venezuela continues and will continue to fight with the same consequence as always for the creation of a multipolar world, but the multipolar world we want is not just around the corner. He speaks of accelerating the transition to a multipolar world and says that accelerating the transition to multipolarity will depend on the clarity, the will and the political decision of the core countries, that is to say, the power countries. The forces that aspire to leave us in the rearguard of history would like to keep us dispersed, following the same perverse game that we are well aware of its disastrous results for humanity.
Among the key ideas that marked the closing day of the event, one was the need to consolidate the exchange of experiences in the international fight for a new world order.
We understand then we must create our friendship, our partnership. Here we have very good and very interesting countries. They have some culture, some people, every have his religion, but we must respect each other, we must help each other, we must work with each other. Together we must to create our future.
In this sense, the Congress set up a space to think not only about the common struggles against fascism and imperialism, but also what it takes for a new world order to emerge, tackling the different crises that shape the present.
And we have a lot of conversation about our organization and our movement and how it's important for the liberty youth and how we can think about the future without capitalism, without racism, without patriarchy, and think about freedom.
The youth of today, fighting in the streets, will be the political leaders of tomorrow. That's the idea that motivates and inspires so many of those present in Caracas. Internationalism, socialism, and anti-imperialism are the words that have raised the hopes of the young generations of the world, from Palestine to our America and every corner of the globe. That is why the Venezuelan president insisted that they have what it takes to conquer the 21st century.
And we have something that they do not have. We have 2 feet, a human brain and 2 hands to fight street by street, hand to hand, for the new humanity, and beat them in the streets, in the networks, in the media, on the walls, in the heart and in the mind. Venezuela is an example today that it is possible to defeat the cognitive massacre and the cyber-fascist coup. We have defeated it. We are defeating it. And Venezuela will consolidate its victory against cyber-fascism, in all the expressions it wants to have, today, tomorrow, or whenever.
In our news, in El Salvador, the second White March took place. Demonstrators took to the streets to protest against the cutbacks measures of Nayib Bukele's government. Roberto Hugo Presa has the details.
Popular discontent was felt in the streets of San Salvador. Social organizations participated in the second White March in which, once again, they asked the government to reconsider the budget cuts for the areas of health and education next year, so as not to affect the poorest families.
We are here to demand a fair budget that really covers the needs of the Salvadoran people. It is not possible that Bukele's government is taking away the budget for health and education to strengthen the armed forces and to strengthen its propaganda program. To make the Salvadoran people and internationally believe that here we live in a wonderland.
We are in solidarity with the struggle of the teachers and the health of the country. Doctors, health workers demand and need our support, and as citizens we are users of health and education services, and that is why we fight together with them.
Teachers, doctors, trade unionists, unemployed environmentalists, vendors, relatives of detainees during the emergency regime, and relatives of political prisoners joined the march to present their demands.
We must also be in solidarity with other sectors that are joining us, but we also need to make visible the violation of human rights, and this is the only space we have left, the streets. That is why we are here today, because the arrests continue. The regime of exception continues to violate rights and the errors are not corrected.
We are here demanding the freedom of our fellow veterans captured during all this time. 25 political prisoners who are now in El Salvador, and dozens of people persecuted for political reasons, also because of the Bukele regime.
Social leaders lament the threats, pressures, and dismissals against people who take to the streets to express their discontent against the government. However, they affirm that little by little, they are losing their fear.
The president of Argentina also made that statement that freedom of expression was respected here, but we see that it is not true, because all these colleagues and fellow health workers who were present at the march on the 19th were dismissed in due process.
Union leaders denounced that once again the police set up roadblocks on the highways to hinder the arrival of citizens from the interior of the country on their way to the White March.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
I have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Found your break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Vice President of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, assured on Saturday that his country does not receive military equipment from other nations. The senior official made the statement during an interview to an Arab media when asked about the contribution of Iran, China, North Korea, and other countries. Medvedev assured that while these countries and many other nations there is good cooperation, but weapons are all manufactured on Russian territory. He also explained that the country is in a state of hybrid warfare with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. On November 19th and the 21st, Ukraine carried out attacks on Russian military facilities with U.S. and British-made missiles in the Bryansk and Kursk regions. In response, Russia attacked the Yuzhmash military-industrial complex in Ukraine with a new Oryshnik missile. Let's see details in the following report.
The supply of Western weapons and their consequent use against Russia during this week had a forceful response that was expected to have thousands of civilian casualties to justify the destruction of Russia. It was not so. A weapon was used that turned history on its head and put the West in check to demonstrate that Russia can be even more effective without the need to use nuclear weapons.
If the conflict develops according to an escalation scenario, nothing can be ruled out, since the NATO member states are, in fact, fully involved in this conflict. They must understand that they are fighting on the side of Ukraine. Moreover, they fight not only by providing them with weapons and financial resources, but they fight directly because they provide targets on Russian territory and control the actions of American or European missiles.
On Thursday night, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, reported the attack with a new medium-range ballistic missile called Orshnik. The message is clear. The war will end as soon as the West decides to stop escalating.
The objects to be destroyed during additional tests of our new missile systems will be determined by us on the basis of the threats to the security of the Russian Federation. We consider ourselves authorized to use our weapons against military targets of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against our country. And in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, we will also respond decisively and in equal proportion. I recommend that the ruling elites of those countries that are hatching plans to use their military contingents against Russia give this some serious thought.
The attack on the Yuzmash military-industrial complex demonstrated that Russia is capable of seriously confronting NATO, whose defense systems can only react to known nuclear weapons, but not to the non-nuclear weapons of Russia's latest ballistic missiles.
As I understand it, Zelensky got scared and started to directly accuse his masters of having left him unarmed in the face of such an action on the part of the Russian Federation. Well, probably this result will be useful, because whatever it is, at least being closer to reality, feeling it in your own skin, I would say, is already useful.
Clearly, they are in a very pensive state. I agree that we don't see any serious statements. And at the very least, you and I can probably agree that for a long time there have been no statements that say that it is necessary to defeat Russia on the battlefield. It has been a long time since we have heard such statements, and I think it is unlikely that we will hear them now.
The Western and Ukrainian press have understood Orshnik as a warning against further escalation. And Western guarantees of security for Ukraine have been put on the back burner. This broke the plan that had hoped to lull Russia into a trap.
teleSUR, Moscú. Forces continued assaults with military vehicles in southern West Bank city of Hebron. Occupation troops stormed the city with military vehicles roaming the streets and stopping citizens' vehicles to check identities. This invasion is in addition to the constant Israeli violations that include the demolition of stables, houses, and residential structures. This is as part of the continuation of the Zionist genocide against the Palestinian people, which has so far claimed the lives of more than 44,000 Palestinian civilians and injured more than 104,000. And in Palestine, the Israeli army has once again attacked the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza. The area has been under brutal siege by the occupier for 51 days in a row. So far, the genocidal troops have attacked more than 10 times the medical complex. The latest aggression have killed 12 people and wounded 2 members of the medical staff. The director of Hossam Abu Safiya described the day as a black day while referring to the recurring bombings against the area. In addition to the casualties and the wounded, the attack affected electricity generation, oxygen networks, and water services. It is important to note that attacking hospitals is a war crime. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.